February 1959. In the Ural Mountains, 9 students began a fateful expedition. They were young, full of passion, believing nothing could stand in their way. Each of them carried their own dreams and ambitions for the future. Together, they crossed frozen streams and slippery slopes. Their laughter echoed through the silent expanse, mixing with the crunching of the snow. The first nights of the journey passed in the warmth of friendship and songs. The music from Georgy Krivonishenko's mandolin chased away the cold and the loneliness of the wild. They shared stories, and felt as if they were an unstoppable force. But this ancient land held its own secrets. Sounds that, at first, they dismissed as mere imagination. A sudden chill. And it wasn't just from the snow. Only the oldest of the group, Semyon Zolotaryov, seemed to understand something. A soldier's past had taught him to recognize unseen dangers. Because with every step, they were drawing closer to the domain of Kholat Syakhl, a place known to the locals by only one name, the Mountain of the Dead. The initial optimism quickly gave way to fatigue and exhaustion. The weather turned for the worse, and the smiles had completely vanished. Silence enveloped them, heavier than the thick blanket of snow. Small arguments about the route began to break out more frequently. And then they saw him, a Mansi hunter, standing silent like a phantom. He didn't wave, didn't say a word, only an unspoken, warning gaze. And then, as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone. That night, another strange sign appeared in the winter sky. It moved in a way that was unlike anything they had ever known. Dyatlov tried to explain it as a natural phenomenon, but fear had begun to take root. It vanished as quickly as it came, leaving only silence and questions. The fear followed them even into their sleep. A distinct feeling that something was out there, watching. Sometimes, they saw silent shadows glide across the tent walls, or heard crunching sounds, like heavy footsteps in the snow. Even the most rational leader could not deny that something was terribly wrong. Facing a relentless blizzard, Igor made a final decision. They would make camp there, on the eastern slope of Kholat Syakhl, a location that, in retrospect, no one could understand why they chose. They began to build their last temporary home, a fragile shelter, against a fury that was beyond human comprehension. As night fell, the storm reached the peak of its fury. An unseen pressure began to crush them, making it hard to breathe. And then, suddenly, everything went silent. Then it came. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't an avalanche. A sound not of this world, shaking the very ground in their minds. In a moment of pure panic, an insane decision was made. They had to get out. Immediately. At any cost. No time to think. No time to dress. No shoes. Not a single layer of protection. Only bare flesh to feel the bone-chilling cold of the snow. All logical thought vanished, replaced by the most primal fear, the fear of prey before an unseen predator. And so began a frantic flight. With no plan, no leader, only the instinct to survive. They plunged into a pitch-black night, where the blizzard was the only wall, and not a single light offered guidance. No direction, no destination. Each footstep had only one purpose: to get away from the horror. They only knew to run from something with no shape, no name, a malevolent presence they could only feel. An invisible enemy whose face they would never get to see, right up to their very last breath. And then, as suddenly as it began, the madness passed, leaving only the chilling stillness of the mountain, leaving only the silent proof of a terrifying night, a testament to human helplessness against an ancient curse. Weeks later, when the rescue team finally reached the scene, they found only a mystery, wrapped in a chilling silence. The official report concluded they died of hypothermia, but the report overlooked the unexplainable details. Horrific internal injuries, as if crushed by an immense force. And the most horrific was what had been taken. Their clothes also bore traces of unknown radiation. An avalanche? A military experiment? Or a force beyond all understanding? All that remains are the memories, and the unanswered questions, the hopes for a bright future, for the peaks that would be conquered, for the life that waited ahead. All of it was buried without a trace, beneath the thick snow and the eternal silence of the mountain. The friendships, forged in lecture halls, tempered through shared journeys, which seemed unbreakable, were also shattered into pieces in a single, terrifying night, by a fear that surpassed all human limits. Everything had ended. Forever. The answer, if it truly exists, will likely remain forever in the frozen heart of this land. It is guarded by the white snow and the howling wind. A secret that the mountain of the dead will never reveal. This next story is from Chloe, who went on a camping trip with her friends deep in the Appalachian Mountains. They'd found a perfect spot next to a serene lake. It was supposed to be the perfect summer getaway. For Chloe and her friends. The night was starting out magically. As the night deepened, they started telling ghost stories. The usual stuff. But as her friend was reaching the punchline of a joke, Chloe saw something, just at the edge of the firelight. A shadow. She wasn't sure what she had seen. It was tall, much taller than a person. And it moved with an unnatural speed. Before disappearing back into the trees, she blinked, trying to process what she'd just seen. She tried to dismiss it. It must have just been an animal, or a trick of the light and shadows. But she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. But then, it happened again. This time, her friend Liam saw it too. The laughter died down. The playful atmosphere was gone. Suddenly, the vast, dark forest around them didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt watchful. The whole group felt the shift in the air. No one dared to speak, barely dared to breathe. And then, they heard it. All four of them jumped violently. A loud snap, not like a squirrel. It sounded heavy, like a footstep. The fear was now real. And it was right there in the dark. He whispered urgently, "Get in the tent. Now." No one said another word. They moved on pure survival instinct. The flimsy safety of the tent was their only hope. Chloe's trembling hand scrambled for the zipper, sealing them inside with their fear. They sat in silence, holding their breath, listening to the sounds from outside. They heard what sounded like slow, heavy breathing, just outside the tent. Something circled their campsite all night. Needless to say, no one slept. The moment dawn broke, they packed up and practically ran to their car. They didn't care about packing neatly. As they were leaving, Chloe noticed something that made her blood run cold. A single, massive footprint in the mud. It wasn't human, and it wasn't from any bear she'd ever seen. The only proof left was an impossible footprint. Our final story tonight comes from someone who wishes to remain anonymous. For her college graduation, her parents rented her a charming little beach house. For a week of solo relaxation, the house looked charming from the outside. The house was old, but it had character. She was excited for her getaway. The room looked peaceful and nostalgic. She thought she had found the perfect place. Or so she thought. The house's secret was waiting upstairs. The first couple of nights were fine. But on the third night, as she was reading, she heard it, a soft creak from the floor above. She was the only one in the house. She brushed it off as the house settling. But her mind was no longer on the page. But then it happened again. She waited, holding her breath. A slow, rhythmic creak, 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 like someone pacing back and forth. Then it stopped. Maybe it was over? It started pacing back. This wasn't the house settling. She dropped her book. She was completely paralyzed with fear. The pacing didn't stop. She was trapped with her unseen roommate. The sound seemed to be coming from one specific room upstairs. The next day, she went to investigate. The pacing from the night before had stopped. The silence in the house was now heavy. She reached the upstairs hallway. She walked the hall, shining her light on the doors. At the end of the hall was a single door, locked from the outside with an old slide bolt. Why would you lock a room from the outside? A chill went down her spine. She quickly backed away. That night, the pacing started again. But this time, it was joined by something else. A faint sound, like a child humming a nursery rhyme. The sound seemed to bleed into the air. She covered her ears, but it was useless. She curled into a ball. She couldn't stop listening. It was all coming from that room. It was too much to bear. The night seemed to last forever. And then, suddenly, it all stopped. But she knew this wasn't the end. That was her breaking point. She lay frozen in bed, listening to the humming and the pacing. And then, she heard the doorknob on the locked room begin to jiggle. Slowly at first, then more violently. That's when she ran. She didn't pack. She didn't even put on shoes. She ran to her car. and drove all night, only stopping when she was hundreds of miles away. She never found out what was in that room. And she never wants to.